Hey guys, Ray from Love You RV and Boat, and today I'm doing a little bit of a major rewiring to my DC systems on the boat here. I don't really like the way it's run. I'd like to fuse it a little bit better and shorten some stuff up. See, what they have right now is down in here we got a Ford Lehman diesel engine, and over here there's two AGM batteries. They provide power to the starter motor to start the engine, and they're also providing power to the bow thruster. There's a relay mounted right down there, automatic combiner relay that combines those batteries with that. Under that big square there's 4 golf cart batteries, or the house batteries that supply the needs of the off-grid camping and that sort of thing. What they've done is they have wires going from those two AGM, call them the starter batteries, and the 4 golf cart battery house batteries, and they run the wires up, and underneath the wheel there's a switch. Just let me show you that. Yeah, right here. So you can switch from 1 or 2 or both or off, and so they have start and house. And I guess that was set up so that if they didn't have enough power in their starter batteries, they could switch over to their house batteries to help start the boat, or even both batteries. I'd rather just have my start batteries dedicated. If there's a problem with that, I'll deal with it. I have jump starters and things like that. I just don't like that big run of unfused wires because it's coming up from this switch. You've got the house wires coming up, cable coming up, and the starting cable coming up, and then there's a cable coming back down. So it's a lot of unfused cabling was in there. Now I fused the house bank. First thing I did when I got the boat, just to make sure that cable was fused, but the starter battery isn't fused and it runs up here. So I'm going to pull that out of here and shorten it up, and from the starter right to the starter battery. And actually on the boat I found a 500 amp fuse, so I'm actually going to install that and see how that works. That should be enough amperage with its time delay that I shouldn't blow the fuse starting the boat, and it would provide some protection to the cabling if there ever was a short. Like say your starter shorted, or the cable came loose and fell against the engine, you'd have a direct short to ground, and that quickly that would smoke and maybe catch on fire, because there's 2-aught cabling in there, so it'd take a lot of current to burn that open. Anyway, I'm going to actually reuse this switch. It's going to stay here. I'm going to keep my lead acid house bank, and I'm adding a lithium house bank, so it's going to be lead acid, lithium, and then I'm going to have the switch going to my inverter, so that way I can run the boat off either the lithium or the house. Anyway, that's down the road. Today I'm just going to set up that starter battery the way I want it. Show you the back side of that switch. So it's all nicely done. The cables are nicely put together and everything, even labeled. There's your start battery bank, house bank, and then 2 starter. So like I say, it's from here all the way to the starter is basically unfused. So I'm going to pull that apart, take those cables off. You can see this switch also is what provides, in this cable, it feeds the power center there for all your 12 volt DC loads come off of that. And there's another wire that comes over here to the windlass 100 amp fuse there. So I pulled the wires off the positive side of the 2 AGM starter batteries. Now I can disconnect that starter cable from the switch, and also the cable that goes to the starter. Okay, so I removed the 2 cables from the switch. This one says to starter, and this one says to engine starter bank. So I can fish those back into the engine bay and shorten this up and hook it up to straight to the starter. We won't need this wire coming from the starter batteries to that switch anymore. Okay, so here's the new arrangement. You can see I've mounted the 500 amp fuse up here. So it comes off these paralleled AGM 12 volt batteries. From this it goes to the fuse, and on the other end of the fuse this wire goes off to the starter, this goes off to the bow thruster, and over on that wall is the bow thruster on-off switch, and there's actually a voltage meter there too, which is handy because when I'm down here in the engine compartment before we leave, I'm always checking the oil and coolant stuff, so I can glance at that and make sure my starter batteries are charged up. They're showing 12.6 right now. And also there's a fuse in there. I took a look and there's a 400 amp fuse for the bow thruster there, and the wires go to the front of the boat where the bow thruster is mounted. Batteries are kind of placed in a wood box here, and they're in containers. There's sort of some covers there where I'm going to have to modify them so the wires fit. And then there's also a vinyl cover that goes off. I may change this in the future and put in a different battery box, but it should work for the time being. There's also a terminal fuse here I had kicking around. It's 175 amp. It's basically protecting this wire that goes over to this Blue Sea ACR automatic charging relay. And what that does is when my house bank gets to a certain voltage level, because the alternator is going to my house bank, and once the voltage rises enough, this closes and combines the two battery banks so that the alternator can recharge the starter batteries as well. So there wasn't any fuses in these wires, so I put that 175 amp just to protect this line. The other one comes up off there behind here. There's a bus bar, DC positive bus bar, and that's where the house bank comes, and then there's a wire that goes up to here, so I may fuse that as well. I'm just running out of fuses, but it's protected by a 300 amp fuse that's hooked to the corner of the house bank there. And then this is just something there wasn't any cover for this at all, other than just a little plastic kind of cover from some food or something. So I went and bought a thicker cover and kind of modified it, and I put it in there, and then I screw it into that hole that's there. Once I get it in there, I put a screw in the top just so that nothing can hit against it or stuff like that. Anyway, we'll show you the route to the starter. So I've used the same wire, 2-aught marine grade cable. All I did was cut it and put a new connector on that end. And this routing I've just left as is. You can see they routed along here, down under this hose, and it comes along here. So you got your alternator and your starter, and then there's the engine ground there. So in the future I might stick this stuff into a conduit. I don't know, it's been okay. And the alternator's back here, and you can see that's where that connects up. And it keeps going along, and there is the starter. Up here is where the main engine ground is, and then here is the starter cable that comes in here. You get a starter solenoid, little motor, solenoid, that sort of thing. Anyway, I do have some spare boots, rubber boots, that I'm going to put one on there, and I actually have one here just to cover them. There we go. A little bit of extra protection anyway. You never know. Might be down there with a tool or something. So, got the covers in place as good as I can. And there's this vinyl piece that they made up that goes over that and keeps the covers pushed down on top. Just like so. So if I find that that fuse ends up blowing, I do carry some little jumper cables just in case. And if there's anything wrong with those batteries, I also carry this GB150 booster box. It's a lithium booster box, and it's rated to start a 10-liter diesel, so you would should start that one no problem. It's kind of my fail-safe backup now that I don't have the switch to switch straight from the house batteries. Anyway, those are my two backup options. Now I've started to rewire things here. Now I have the house bank is in the same spot, but I've wired a new lithium bank, and then there's one coming down that's going to go to my inverter, so I'll do that in a future video, so stay tuned for that. Till next time, Ray from loveyourrv.com, and boat. Don't forget, folks. Boat.